computer. And so Gary Direnfeld here, and I'm here with Lana Wickstrom, and we're talking about business development and marketing, and this is just one of our regular calls, and I'm recording, and who knows, people may listen in.
Great. Gary, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about and hear from you today about is last time we had talked a lot about mediation and business model and development of that. And I've used the phrase that practice signature and getting used to that a lot. And I've really adopted a lot of what we talked about last time in terms of getting really more comfortable with my mediation practice and how I'm delivering my service model. And the other large part, I would say, of my practice, I'd say it's about 65% mediation and about 35% separation coaching. So separation and divorce coaching in my world and the way I offer it helps people understand the language and terminology related to separation and divorce, helps people understand the process options that are available for people who are contemplating or proceeding or going through separation or divorces. It also offers people, and I describe it like this, and I'd like some of your feedback on how you describe your separation coaching services distinct from counseling or distinct from anything else that you provide. When I talk to people about separation coaching, I liken it to this, as I think that because of the busyness we've often created in our dual income working families, as well as because of the fast pace or the amount of extracurricular activities we've created for our families, we have lost this natural connection in our community for mentorship that's organic or mentorship that's natural. So I grew up in small town Saskatchewan. I think my mom and many of her peers would go to the United Church when they had any kind of gathering, and they would get this kind of natural mentorship by talking about issues, talking about navigational issues, about their relationship with their kids. We don't have those natural opportunities for community anymore. And I think for me, that's what I observe this coaching profession to be proliferating in the community, because we don't have these natural opportunities for organic connection and mentorship from others, even peers in our community. So when I talk to people about separation coaching, it's often that I describe it, or I find myself describing it as, it's a trusted advisor who has some education and knowledge about the language, the terminology, the processes, the challenges, the common pitfalls for people who are navigating their separation, separate and apart from, of course, legal advice, that not being part of what I offer anymore. And I'd like your take on how you describe, how you work with your clients in terms of separation and divorce coaching. Knowing our backgrounds are varied and different, it of course affects what we bring to the services and what our clients might be expecting from us.
Okay, sure. As we're doing that, I'm just wondering with this video, if we can have both of our faces on a split screen.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Same time. And I'm just, multiple participants can share simultaneously. Advanced sharing options.
I like that this is your responsibility to figure this out and not mine.
I know. Who else can start sharing when someone else is sharing? No, that isn't it. I'm going to have to figure. Oh, wait. There we go. Can you see both of us?
I see a small me up here and a large you here in the middle, but that's fine. If you see what you're supposed to see, that's great.
Yeah, okay. Sorry for that delay.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so yes to everything that you've said so far.
Okay.
In terms of what you do. And so many of the folks that I see in separation coaching are in what we call high conflict divorces. They are self-identifying their former partners as narcissists, as borderline personality disorders. I don't know where they're getting the diagnoses. They're not getting the diagnoses from me, but they're self-diagnosing, I think, their partner. In any event, they're telling me that their partners are very hard to get along with. So what I explain in terms of my role as a coach, first of all, I can't psychoanalyze somebody who isn't in front of me. Don't even know if I can do it if they're in front of me. But what I can help them to do is take a look at how they are triggered and their own reactions to those triggers. So it's about how do we manage ourselves in the context of a distressing ongoing relationship. Now, earlier you had asked me, how do I distinguish what I do as a separation coach? How do I differentiate that from counseling? So, you know, in counseling, we're typically trying to, or in therapy rather, we're typically trying to change the structures of how one's personality is organized and help them to manage their personality in a much broader context. In coaching, we're not counseling, we're not doing therapy. It's a very specific piece for a very specific relationship, and we're just trying to give tools and strategies to manage ourselves with what is distressing incoming. So just to differentiate that a bit from therapy or counseling, you know, I may explore, hey, where do you think that comes from, that you have this trigger, so that you can understand it. But I'm not going back to childhood. I'm not, you know, getting all of one's past. I may want to know who the extended kin are and who's on what, you know, because there's sometimes a tribal warfare.
Yeah.
So who's part of the tribe in those warfares and who's doing what, and who do you think is talking even though it's coming out of this voice,
right,
so that we know how to manage the ecology, the whole setting of the people, the whole situation. So I draw a lot from the work of Bill Eddy.
As do I, yes.
You know, in this context. I love his work. I like the book Biff. I'm frequently recommending that. I'm frequently trying to help people to understand the concepts of brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And I'm also drawing on his concept EAR statements, empathy, attention, and respect, so that the person I'm coaching can better manage whatever is incoming. And so it's always from a perspective, we're not changing the other person, it's how do we handle our triggers. And the folks that I have worked with have found that remarkably helpful.
And I think that, too, one of the best services, and I think that I saw, and I believe it was you who wrote about an encounter you had had with a client. And at the end of the encounter, you had said, this is separation coaching. And what the value of it was validation for the client of the experience. And for me, I think that is separation and divorce itself becomes so isolating for people from the shame, blame, and guilt. They isolate themselves from a situation. Other people are isolating us because you don't want to catch separation and divorce because it's like a disease. And so these people are often self-isolating and being isolated by others, and then trying to navigate really challenging issues on their own and in a vacuum. And because of that shame, blame, and guilt feeling, I don't think that there is much, despite, you know, friends and family offering, let me know what I can do, let me know how I can be of help. There's such resistance to sharing that dirty laundry because sometimes, as you know, it just stinks so badly.
Well, but the alternative to that is that when we do share, people are keen to give their advice, their opinion, their guidance. Very often that opinion, guidance, and advice is from a personal experience. And people take their personal experience and extrapolate and think it's a shared experience.
Yes.
Everyone has the same experience. So, you know, again, one of the benefits of coming to the separation or divorce coach is that you're typically meeting with someone who doesn't have one experience, they have hundreds of experiences and a much broader frame of reference from which to draw in order to offer the client a broader range of understanding and strategies to cope.
So tell me what you think of this tool that I've developed. And I don't know if it's, I always think this is a legit thing, but I guess if you create it, it's a legit thing. Right?
It must be legit. You made it.
Right. It's on the internet. It's got to be legit. I'm now on the right. I talk to people, and I talk to a lot of clients about teaching them the difference between, or distinguishing or identifying the difference between formal support and informal support. And I talk about formal support are people who have experience, education, and who you're likely paying in order to help you get some advice about how to navigate a situation. And that advice is something that you would receive from somebody that you can rely on because of their varied experiences or their education. And then we distinguish that from who do you have and who are you accessing that can be your support. And support are people who comfort you, provide you with reassurance, help you. And so identifying very early in the separation coaching, who is your formal support? And those are the people that we draw down from. And that formal supports are people who should be giving you advice. Advice sounds like this. And then informal supports, who are they? Literally identifying who they are. And you should be getting from that support. Support looks and sounds like this to help people identify, oh, darn it, I think I might be getting advice from my hairdresser, or I might be getting advice from my aunt in Manitoba who has no children, and I'm doing what she did in her separation, right? And so the difference, to teach the people the difference between advice and who it should come from, and support and who it should come from. And I think that I genuinely believe when I offer help to someone and I say, I really want to help, let me know what I can do, you know, we do that because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel good to help somebody else. And when we deny people the opportunity to help us, they'll probably just find a different way to try and help us in their own version, which often comes out in this well-intended but necessarily unsolicited advice. So I talk to people about preparing for that and say, when those informal support people come to you and want to offer advice, brainstorm things. Brainstorm 5 things that could concretely help you so that you feel good because it's got something off your plate, and they feel good because they're actually feeling like they're contributing to you.
I want to add to this. You know, I on my invoice, I don't write separation coach. I don't write counselor. I write consultation.
Okay.
And to me, I use that generically. And I want to explain, you know, when you have a professional helper and we're giving our consultation, a consultation is at times a bit of advice, but the challenge or the difference between a professional and a non-professional, the professional doesn't require you to follow the advice.
Right.
The professional isn't going to get upset if you don't follow the advice. So a consultation is the giving of information in the interests of the client, not in the interests of the professional, which may or may not be used by the client. It always remains at the client's discretion. When we look at our informal networks, particularly family and friends, when a family member or a friend invests in giving you information, very often there's the expectation that you're going to follow it. And
I love that.
And if you don't follow it, there can be some consternation around that from the person who provided it. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So, you know, this is also a difference that you know, be careful who you seek your advice from, because if there's an expectation that you follow it and you don't, that can put a wrinkle in that relationship.
Yeah. Yes, and you can just think back and hearken back to any personal experience where you say, well, I've told them this 5 times, I'm done talking to them about it, right? And that's the eroding aspect of that capacity for ongoing support, is if you go to them for advice, you don't follow this advice, then you end up eliminating them as a support.
We, the professional, you know, we realize that we will never know your life as intimately as yourself.
Right.
And so that anything we may offer, you're going to have to chew on that, and you're going to have to morph it, and you're going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to make it fit into your whole life context, right, the likes of which we'll never understand. So, you know, if you come back and you followed it, and depending on how it worked, we can tweak. If you didn't follow it, I'm not going to admonish you. I'm going to, oh, okay, and try and understand that. And typically, if somebody doesn't follow it, there's a fear underneath it that hasn't been addressed. So it just gives us more meat.
Right.
Let's get into that. Let's figure out why you didn't follow. What's the concern? What bad might happen? I love this line. What bad might happen if you were to follow it, right? Because that unleashes the concern. And then we can address that and say, you know what, in this context, maybe that wasn't good advice. Good for you for not following it. But it allows the dialogue. Or if we can address the concern, because it may still be a good piece of guidance, but we may have to manage it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the difference between working with a professional and non-professional.
Mm-hmm. And Gary, I'd like to talk to you more about when we use the word manage, and it certainly inspired for me a thought that I wanted to canvas with you, is when you are managing clients' communications, and I know even on your website you say I can't respond to everyone's emails that you send to me. I'm not able to be an intimate therapist over the email. What I have found is one of the challenges, and I guess this comes from a little bit of the background of the legal career where I have this penchant and this need to always have this follow-up email every time I talk to someone. And I think that that's just a practice that was maybe ingrained from me from doing my legal practice. But for me, it also helps to provide clarity for me about maybe it's a validation for me of value. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think part of it comes from clients saying to me, or my experience with clients prior, saying, when I'm with you and I'm in the moment and I'm looking at you, this makes sense, and I'm following you, and I walk out of the room and my mind goes blank and I can't think of what those words are, or I can't think of how we related those concepts, or I can't think of that. So I use this whiteboard. I don't know if you can see this giant whiteboard in my room, and we use markers and we take pictures of these different concepts and how they're related so that they have some visual. And I email that to them with a little bit of a summary of, here's our meeting and here's what your homework was. In between, here's what you talked about wanting to take action on, or here's what you talked about reflecting on, whatever the case may be. And so I give clients an opportunity to receive value by way of the copying, sending in that little summary, the homework, and then they can have contact, an email contact in between our sessions, wherein they respond back about their homework or can ask inquiries in terms of that. And I do it as this a value-based package. And I'm wanting to know, I offer that because I've seen clients, or I've had clients say, I experience value from that. It's helpful for me. I like that. I want to be able to have contact with you, even if it's in some minor way between sessions, to be able to get some feedback. Talk to me about how you manage or how you approach, or if at all, contact with clients between sessions, or any feedback on what you hear about my model.
This is the neat thing about business. This is the neat thing about all of our practice. It's highly individualized, and our practice often reflects ourselves. So I don't send an email afterwards, typically summarizing. However, sometimes in the meeting, before the meeting ends, we may have talked about this the last time, I always have a debrief, right? And the debrief is, okay, let's just go over a couple of things. What did we discuss today? What are your takeaways? And I said, do you want a pen and paper? Are you going to remember this? Would you like to write it down? You're welcome. I have a tendency to put as much responsibility as possible onto the client.
Okay.
Okay, every time it's my responsibility, you're paying for that, by the way. And from my perspective, you don't learn to self-manage if I'm managing for you. So philosophically, we're coming from different places, but I want to assure you, neither is right and neither is wrong. They're just different places. So I use the debrief. What did we talk about today? What was helpful to you today? What are your takeaways from today? And also, is there anything I could have done to have been more helpful to you today? So I want a bit of feedback about me in terms of my performance. I don't do this all the time, but I do it frequently.
And the time that you allot for your sessions, being that 3-hour window, gives you the opportunity to do that without the time constraint and pressure where you feel, yes, Yes. So that's what I feel too, that now even that I've extended them to 90 minutes, and even after you and I have talked and I've remodeled a few things about that, the 3-hour window, because I used to, I think I had mentioned, I tried to do some of my individual mediation preparation that I require as a mandatory part of my process model over a few sessions, and it just was too stop, start, and broadened that into a 3-hour session. So that already resonated with me.
Wow.
But now to even do that with the separation coaching, and to just get over the initial block of, well, like, will clients want to pay for 2 sessions back to back? Well, I guess if they want help and they want service, I guess they will, right?
Well, but the other thing about my model is I'm not ever seeing anyone week to week. And so, you know, the typical helping model over the, 78, 100 years has been the standard 50-minute hour week to week. And so you get so far, you come back, and the first 5 minutes is, chit chat. Then the next 5 minutes is, what did we talk about next week? Then we've got about 25, 30 minutes of working talk, and then we have to quickly wrap up and get paid. And I find that just so inefficient. So
Absolutely.
When I have a good 3-hour first meeting, I'm typically not seeing anyone for 3 to 6 weeks thereafter.
Yes.
And because they've got work to do. They may have books to read. They may have things to enact, to try. And I recognize that the first time anyone tries any of these strategies, they're not going to be practiced at it, so it's going to be awkward. And if you bring them back too soon, they're going to say, well, I tried it. It was awkward. I tell them it's going to be awkward. And I said, you're going to have to try it time and time and time again, so that by the time you come back, you'll have developed a bit of proficiency. And then let's talk. Because I know you're not going to be satisfied in a week's time. So to bring you back to hear you not satisfied, good for my pocketbook, but it isn't good for the client. In my model. So, 3 to 6 weeks later, they come back. And, when they come back, I ask 3 questions. And the first question is never, how are you? The first question is, what percolated? What did you get out of the first session? I want to remind them. Do you recall anything that we talked about? And in recalling anything that we talked about, did you continue to think about it? Did things go through your mind? Did whatever was going through your mind, did it change over time? Because, thoughts are like pulling a thread. You never know what unravels. And so over the passage of time, you may go clicky, click, click on something, and you get a broader vision of what we talked about. The next question I ask is, what are you doing differently? The result of our first meeting. Are you doing anything differently? Because you know what? If nothing percolates, if you're not doing anything differently, then when I get to my third question, we already know what the answer is. And the third question is, how are you? Has anything changed? And, if something percolates, if you put some of this stuff into action, we would expect there to be some change. So, that's my hierarchy of questions. And they're framed such that it puts an onus on the client to do some work. The onus isn't on me. It's not my life. I'm here as that coach to help you, but if you're not doing the work, you're not going to reap the benefit. Sorry about this cold.
Oh, not at all, not at all. Don't excuse yourself. It's just fine.
Is this helpful?
Very. Yeah, very. There's I'm sure that there are some social workers or other therapists in town that are offering coaching services or separation and divorce coaching services, but they're not advertising it as such. So again, very similar to our last conversation, there's not a lot of people just population-wise, I think, in Saskatoon who are doing a lot of this work. So it's difficult to network, connect, run ideas, to listen to how other people are doing things. So it's very it's very valuable for me to be able to listen to that. Another thing about the separation coaching services that I was going to ask you is, to what extent, I find a lot of my clients, I would say a third, without having done the research, are looking at this high conflict spouse that they've self-diagnosed with a personality disorder and wanting to, initially wanting assistance to know how to change them, which once we reality test that expectation, we learn about having to be some self-aware about ourselves. And I would say that's about a third of people. And I would say maybe half of the remainder are looking for someone to help them plan out, think about, make some decisions about a contemplated separation, or they've decided to separate and they're coming to say, what are the process options? How do people go about making good decisions? How do you talk to someone about saying, I want to separate from you? When do I talk to my kids about it? What should I say to family and friends? What are some things I should start thinking about? Can you talk to me about your experience with those kind of clients?
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a separation coach, though. You may call it pre-separation counseling.
Yeah, okay.
Contemplating. There's a person out of the States who's, I apologize, whose name I forget, talks about discernment counseling.
Yes.
But that's not something for the individual, that's something for the couple.
Yeah, we have a local practitioner here who practices discernment counseling about the ambivalent part where they're deciding not to engage or disengage, but to just take some time to be able to contemplate.
Right. So you're entering into a realm that's pre-separation. You're not working with the couple. You're there with the individual, and so I see folks at that stage as well. I actually, in my practice, just to differentiate couple different styles, I encourage the couple to come in as best I can, because it's not just an individual issue now, and when we see an individual, in all circumstances, but particularly in this circumstance, very often we're going to get a one-sided account and hear all the bad that is going on in the relationship. And that bad, we have a tendency, just being human, to kind of magnify it. And the other side may be oblivious to all these things. So we have to be careful that in meeting with an individual, we're not inadvertently supporting a separation that need not happen.
Yep. And I would say most when I'm talking about these clients, these are clients who have come to me and said, I have made up my mind, I am deciding, and I want to have some assistance with what's my next step. How do I go about this? As opposed to, I'm not sure I should separate. Those, that definitely I would be pushing back to a more appropriate professional in terms of determining and helping them develop clarity about where it is they want to go in terms of their relationship.
Yeah.
This segment of clients are seeking me out because they've decided, I think, and the spouse doesn't know, and the spouse might not know for a variety of reasons. So the spouse doesn't know because it's maybe a domestic violence situation. It's maybe a historical situation where they've had really unproductive discussions about prior aspects of their separation, or they've separated 3 times before, but this time she really wants it to stick, or he really wants it to stick, something like that. And what, if anything, is your experience, or what can you share about your experience with those clients if you see this?
Sure. Because I do see clients where, you're right, they've made up their mind. This isn't, discernment. This is, how do I go forward? I haven't informed my partner. And there we have to get a bit of background as to, why are you separating? What's going on? Are there any safety concerns? It's not infrequent that I will see a spouse where there are serious issues of domestic violence in those circumstances. So we also do safety planning.
Yes, absolutely.
I may refer particularly, well, I haven't had men come to me in this circumstance, so I will talk from a gender-based perspective. I will refer women to a local women's shelter, not to go live there, not to move in, not that they need the shelter per se, but because there's access to so many other resources there, including the safety planning. And the thing about suggesting to a woman to get some of these services met at a shelter, it helps build that community support for that woman. So, you know, heaven forbid she is in a dangerous situation and has to flee and does need shelter, there will be a pre-existing relationship with the organization. And so it helps to bridge that.
And would that work that you're doing with somebody who you understand to have decided to separate, not in ambivalence or contemplation, but who is on their own developing a plan and reaching out to you to try to learn some tools or education, do you call that separation coaching, or what would you call that service?
Good question. I think I'd still call that separation coaching because I'm helping that person to separate. They're just in a different stage of the separation.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
They're not pre-contemplating. It's not that they haven't thought of it first.
Yes.
It's not that they haven't contemplated. They're between contemplation and action.
Yes.
And so they need to figure out that course of action. And so to me, that's a reasonable referral for a separation coach.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of our work with that person is helping that person develop a plan for informing their partner.
Yes.
Can you do that at the kitchen table? Can you do that in somebody else's home with somebody else present? Can you, should it come through a third party? And if so, what's that going to be like? And if it is going to come through a third party, you know, depending if that's a lawyer, sometimes lawyers send very nasty letters which only inflame the situation. You know, I still recommend to people hire a collaboratively trained lawyer so that they can send a more conciliatory letter, not an inflammatory letter. You know, it's bad enough receiving a letter that says, and you know, I've been retained, and you know, your partner says they want to leave, and you're a scoundrel.
Right.
So your partner wants to leave. This may come as a shock to you.
Oh, I've frozen.
Oh dear.
Yep.
Back? Okay. Yeah, I just got a thing that says internet connection is unstable. If we lose each other, we'll just use the same link and try and get back.
Yes.
I do have your phone number. If we can't get together at all, I will phone you back.
Okay, that's great.
So that letter should not be inflammatory, accusatory, blaming, shaming, demanding. It should only be informing of the initial stages, and that your partner is, you know, recognizes that this may come as a shock to you, that there may, you know, may need time to process this. And so this is how we want to, you know, help facilitate the process as smoothly, safely, respectfully as possible. You know, we know, particularly with abusive partners, from the Bill Eddy work, empathy, attention, respect goes a long way to soothing hurt, angry feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want the letter writer, to whoever that may be, it could be the spouse or the lawyer, to really key in and appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
In other contemplations where subsets of clients maybe aren't in a domestic violence situation, but they have grieved the loss of a spousal relationship, they are in acceptance that the spousal relationship's over, they may have been in acceptance for 10 years. They may have been there for a decade.
These are such tough moments for the spouse initiating the separation. Because they are so emotionally ahead of the other spouse who's going to have the rug pulled out from under them. That part of the separation coach challenge is to help them to slow down.
and develop realistic expectations about how quickly this can happen, about how well the other person can adjust, because, you know, taking action and denial and bargaining, not so compatible, right? So can you talk to me about some of the tools that you would give to the person who is in acceptance, looking for action in terms of moving forward with the separation, and how you reframe it for them? So I try to get them to, of course, walk the person who is in denial and bargaining, but
So,
outside of that, can you talk to me about how you help to coach that person?
so here's where the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross comes to mind. She's a grandmother in psychology.
Of course,
and
yes.
she is the woman accredited with giving us the 5 stages of grief when we are bereaved, when a loved one passes away. And it starts with, you know, denial, bargaining. I forgot what all these are.
Denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance.
There we go. Thank you. And so we draw from her fabulous work and we apply it to this context that your partner is going to have to grieve the loss of the relationship. Whether that's, you know, that's gender neutral, whether it's the man or the woman initiating this, their partner has to grieve the loss of the relationship. And so we talk about that, and we also talk about that these aren't distinct phases that we just run through one after the other, that they're kind of circular. You go forward, you go back, you go over here, you come down over there. So the degree to which we can educate our client on those stages of grief, and then have a discussion with them. When your partner is faced with something that they cannot accept and they meet it with denial, what would that look like in their behavior? What would that look like in their expression of emotion? How would they handle that in terms of an expression of emotion? So from denial to bargaining, what would that look like? How would they try and entice you? Because depending on the partner, it comes out different behaviorally. But when you're working with an abusive partner, it could be you leave and I'm going to strike you. With a narcissistic partner, you know, oh, come on, I'll turn on the charm. With, you know, another partner, it'll just come out as sheer anger, that bargaining. I'll take you for, you know, threats and intimidation. So, so forewarned is forearmed. Is that the same?
Yeah. And I talk about that with clients by saying this. So plan for what you know instead of planning for what you hope or planning for what you wish. Plan for what you know. So if this person has a propensity in your past when faced with these situations to act this way, plan for that so that you're not triggered by that, so that we're not getting into I'm triggered and I'm going up and up and up and up and up and up and up, because that seems to be what I observe to be that pattern. So in terms of developing realistic expectations, to plan for what you know about how they've navigated these kind of situations in the past.
So I'm also a big one for cognitive strategies for the folks that I work with. Okay. And one of the strategies I like is called a cognitive cue. You need a cognitive cue. That's fancy dancy talk for a reminder. And one of the concepts that I reinforce for people is you have to be patient. There's no timeline for going through these stages, and you need patience. So you need a cognitive cue, something to remind you to be patient. Now, I'm a workaholic. I love what I do. I love meeting with you today. I'm on holidays, by the way.
Oh my gosh, are you really?
And here I am. Right? I love, this is, to me, this is fun.
Yeah.
To meet and chat with you. So above my computer in my other location, I have the word relax carved in wood, and it sits on top of my computer screen. Clients would walk into that office and think that the word relax applies to them. No, it's my cognitive cue. I imbue this with meaning, and the meaning is turn off the darn computer, spend some time with your wife, and when our son was a little boy, spend some time with your son, don't be a total workaholic. And it worked because it was sitting there. It was my constant reminder. And it's funny because if it gets tilted down and I don't see it, I work later into the night. I know. So we all need that cognitive cue. We all need that reminder. So with our clients, you know, with the person who's initiating this, and it can never go fast enough for them. And it's always going too fast for their partner. Patience. And you need to write that on a piece of paper, or you need a picture of a sunrise by the lake to, you know, to calm yourself. Whatever works for you, right? It's not about us. It's, you know, what is the cognitive cue? What is the reminder that'll work for you that says they have to go through their stages of grief to come out the other side. We're going to expect all these behaviors along the way. Here's our strategy for managing each stage of the behavior or of the, change process. And here's our cognitive cue to keep all of that top of mind for us. So these are some of the concrete strategies that we can deploy.
I want to share with you something that you might find interesting in your resources. So, okay, a friend of mine who in Saskatchewan owns a company called Grounded Goodness. And I encourage you to take a look at what it is. So Grounded Goodness, I'm just looking at the things that they have here. So she has this company that they started out and they do decals for farm implementation machinery, like the danger, don't step here, do these things. And so she has expanded a lot of her personal leadership that she was doing on her own as a result of a separation and a divorce. And so her company, she did a subset of her company, and they have created these, and now tell me, Gary, if you can see these inspirational decals.
You're not alone.
Yeah, so this is the mental health collection, and 11 decals. So these are removable, but I've had one on the back, and they have lots of different sayings and lots of different collections. And I've had the one on the back of my cell phone forever. And then I'm getting her to do a customized package of these specifically for separation coaching clients, to have some of these cognitive cues in mind about certain struggles or challenges that, whether your separation coaching clients have certain ones and mental cues that that often come up. So I've developed this list, and I'm getting her to do these, but she has all of these different kinds of collections with different sayings. So this one, for example, is like what can you say yes to today? Now this is on a different personal leadership kind of aspect, but and they always encourage one that stays open and that they can customize. Can you
read that one out loud? I can't see it.
This one has nothing on it, so this is an empty one. So they can customize it to their cognitive cue. So this is I can now describe these. This is what I also loved about the collaboration of working with other. You get different ways of describing things or different ways of describing yourself to these things. So this is great. I'm going to talk about these with clients, the ones that I'm developing with her, and I'm calling it the separation coaching package, the collection of that she's customizing, so that I can talk to people about having that relax, their version of the wooden relax, right?
Yes. And so, this cognitive cue, it could be, a word carved in wood that I have. It could be these decals. It could be you put anything on a piece of paper. I often tell people, write something down, stick it in your pocket, carry it around with you, because if it's not on you, you just lose it.
Yeah, and it needs
these things.
I had one client who bought a bracelet because she knew that this was going to be a trying time, and a few keywords that she needed to be able to remember in messages. And we developed a system for her where she would take the bracelet, and she had this habit of spinning, like spinning some people will touch their hair or touch their necklace or whatever, and so we developed that association.
Yeah, I've also had people tattoo themselves these days.
Wow. That's serious.
If it works for you, it works for you. I don't tattoo, but I'm not against tattooing. The other strategy I suggest to people is a song. You know, a couple that comes to mind when I'm working with women, particularly women who've been either physically abused or oppressed. I love the song from the 1970s, I Am Woman by Helen Reddy. I am woman, hear me roar, a number's too big to ignore. I won't give you the rest.
You won't sing it? You don't sing it for clients?
I do sing it. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, if they come back, you'll know.
But the lyrics are great. And what I do is I print the lyrics out and I give people the lyrics to that song. Another great song is I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I happen to love a Cole, what's her first name? Jazz singer. I forget her first name.
Nat?
Not Natalie Cole, no. No, a different woman. Anyways, there's a fabulous jazz rendition of that song sung by this woman. And, you know, you can get it on YouTube and you see the video and all the musicians are like so into it and punctuating every word. Anyways, these are other cognitive cues, theme songs.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes a person has to sing it to themselves while they're dealing with the incoming barrage. It helps to keep them centered and not get inducted.
Yeah, it's such a valuable part of that because it also helps to reinforce for the client that this is your work. This is your work to self-manage, right? And that this isn't about changing that other person. This is about changing the way that you react or interact or respond to the stimulus.
Yeah, I've had some folks say, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to change my personality.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't even argue that. But what I will say is this isn't about changing you. This isn't about changing your personality. This is about how to better manage the incoming behavior and not inflame it inadvertently. Because at the end of the day, we're doing all of this so you can have a better outcome.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So it's important to help the client maintain that perspective. Why do I have to do all the work? You know, we frequently hear that in separation.
Absolutely.
Why do I have to do? Because you want a better outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, you often hear the refrain, I separated because I didn't want to do this anymore. I separated because I wanted freedom from this, or I wanted to be absolved of these responsibilities. But it's a mindset, it's a shift in mindset to support clients through to be able to understand that that work is never done.
Yeah, this is to help you get that better outcome.
Yeah.
This is to help bring some semblance of peace, hopefully, or at least ratchet down the degree of conflict, if not find peace, so that you can manage and live more successfully.
So I want to take a left turn on a little bit of what we're talking about and ask you some questions about some of the professional associations that you value and have benefit from in your professional work.
Two, really. And there's so many organizations out there. You know, this plurality of organizations is a problem these days.
Agreed.
So I have to belong to my regulatory body. I'm also, you know, being a social worker, I also belong to our social work organization, which I don't have to, but it's to promote the practice of social work. Then I'm a mediator, but I'm not licensed. I don't belong to a mediation body, but yet there's another organization. I'm a member of AFCC, Association of
Family and Conciliatory Courts.
Thank you. To me, that's so far the single best organization that I've been a member of. They have remarkable resources accessible to members on their website. They also have remarkable resources accessible to non-members. There's a whole bunch of aspirational standards of practice so that you could read those standards of practice. They've been developed by all the bigwigs in the field. You can access them and have those standards inform your practice. Typically, regardless of whatever profession you are in, those standards, from what I have seen, are so all-encompassing that they cover like all the standards of practice and more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As a member, you also have access to the Family Court Review, just a fabulous journal that addresses probably everything that we've talked about and more. They have some of the most, there you go, there's your copy.
Yeah.
They have phenomenal annual conferences, and there's also sub-conferences.
Yeah.
In different
I'm going
things.
to Toronto in I think it's next July. Their AFCC is hosting in Toronto.
Which reminds me, I gotta do some work towards that. I want to send in a request for proposals.
Great.
So they are a fabulous educational support body.
Agreed.
And, you know, I love going to the conferences as well because you're meeting and you're getting information from the leading minds in the world. I also like IACP, International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. These are like-minded people who want to help separating couples separate as peacefully as possible. They're inclusive in that it's they look at a multidisciplinary team, including mental health professionals, financial professionals.
Do you do much family coaching? As in there, we talked about you have had some troubles and struggles with the uptake of collaborative practice, and that you've dropped it from your website of your menu, I should say, menu items.
No, it's still there.
Oh, okay.
It's that the process hasn't yet fully taken off in our community, and I haven't been invited to the collaborative table in our community. I've been invited in a few other communities, so I don't know what it is. But I still very much believe in the process. I'm a proponent of what I call bottom-up collaborative law, just to mention that for a minute. So what is that? You know, many people think, or many people in the business of collaborative practice believe that the entry point to the process is through the lawyer. And that's traditional collaborative law, if we can use traditional now in a process that's, you know, only so bottom-up collaborative law, anyone can be the entry point. And in fact, I'm frequently the entry point. So people come to me, hey, we're separating, Gare, what should we do? I say, come see me, we'll mediate. And if the financials are simple, you'll likely be able to do some of that on your own. If not simple, we'll send you off to a divorce financial professional. And once they've done their magic and we've done our magic, then we'll send you off to a couple of collaborative lawyers, and they'll button it up into an agreement. And so this is bottom-up collaborative law. So most of the collaborative lawyers are looking to me for referrals rather than them coming the other way.
Agreed.
So I've got from my perspective, a very active collaborative practice. But it's not structured in the way that people now traditionally think of collaborative law. And
I really feel as though one of the goals for me in leaving the practice of law was because of the red tape, the process, this has to stop, that has to stop. And so I really found, even when I was going through the collaborative training, the basic collaborative model training, that even sometimes when we looked at the contract or we looked at the process or we looked at the engagement model, I found like, ooh, are we creating just another series of red tape or another series of contractual obligations? And so I too have had to be maybe a little bit less bureaucratic and less structured about the onboarding process for a lot of clients to getting to the point of ILA and doing it much like what you have said, being as creative as possible with our services to just literally peacemake and problem solve. Sometimes I just say to people, like, we're not even doing mediation. We're just literally, we're problem solving.
I'll tell you, that's where I love the work of Woody Mostyn.
Yes, you had mentioned that, yes.
First of all, he's just a nice guy, fabulous person. And he is such a creative thinker. You know, he'll look at these formalized structures that we have in place and say, well, what if we did this? And what if we did that? And why can't we do this? And why can't we do it this way? Hey, have any of you ever tried doing it? You know, and he'll put another twist on it. And so he's not stuck by orthodoxy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And neither am I.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we're acting ethically, we can still do so many things differently. Now, you know, having said that, when you're learning collaborative law or collaborative practice, it does help to have a structure in place for learning and developing the initial practice. But once you are more advanced, what I tell people is collaborative practice is a frame of mind. It's not a set of instructions. Mm-hmm. And when you can internalize that frame of mind, which says, how are we going to settle this dispute peacefully? And so Woody Mostyn gives us the term peacemakers, that we're peacemakers, as a way to reframe us thinking more broadly than mediation or collaborative law, these neat little boxes. But what are all the elements of all these things, including litigation? He has rules in place that even in a collaborative process, certain things can be opted out for litigation. You can have a collaborative holiday, go run to your litigators and have them on retainer even if you want in a parallel process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. What is going to get you towards a hopefully as peacefully an organized settlement as possible.
And oftentimes I'm saying to clients that it is a matter of trying to prioritize the most mature, less volatile, less reactive processes possible in the circumstances, and navigating those decisions with that frame of mind or that tone at the forefront.
So you had asked me, what organizations do I belong to? My college, my regulatory body. I had belonged to the Ontario Psychiatric Association for 25, 35 years. I may have just let that lapse in the last year or so. And I belong to AFCC, and I belong to IACP. Okay. Those are the organizations to which I belong.
Okay. I really appreciate your time, Gary, this morning. Again, I have immensely appreciated a lot of the perspective, the framing, the language. It's so helpful to learn how other people approach this with clients, especially when you're in a closed room with clients and you don't talk about with the general population the things that you're processing with clients. And so it's so validating even to hear the kind of clients that you're working with, or the kind of clients that I seem to be working with as well, and that the approaches or concepts or thoughts that you are working with through clients seem to be the same kind of presenting ones, and it helps for me to be able to hear you frame it, identify it, how you organize that in your mind, and I really appreciate your time.
So just before we sign off,
yeah,
let's practice a little debrief.
Okay.
Can you give me 3 things that you got out of this? 3 takeaways that you may think about or may do something differently the result of?
Absolutely. So in terms of developing some comfort about my initial contact with clients when they come back, what I am going to do now is practice some comfort and get some kind of signature way of asking that debriefing question. So being able to say to them, what resonated with you? What stuck in your mind? What did you hear me saying in your mind between the last time we talked and now? And I love this, what are you doing differently? So being able to see, has what we've talked about made an impact with you? One thing that I ask clients to do is spend some time during our session to talk about what kind of self-care can you practice between now and the next time you come? Even if it means like going for a 30-minute walk or spending 5 minutes breathing a night, and trying to be able to debrief them through that. And that, highlighting that to be able to say to people, what has changed, or what takeaway has actually impacted your behavior to make a shift. And I like being able to routinely prioritize that. I like that concept of starting out that way, because it gives a really natural progression towards, you know, introducing how to get back into the swing of things for the coaching of the clients, so that it's the most efficient way to use the process. The other big thing that I love is this cognitive cues, because I don't think I ever really gave that, that label sticks with me. That label sounds the more concrete word of saying reminder, and being able to prioritize for a lot of people the necessity for those cognitive cues, because I think that that's what helps people ground themselves in those moments where they feel as though they're being triggered, and they feel as though there's that propensity for them to act the way they had been acting, or the way that they might have acted, but for bringing forward that cognitive cue. So making sure that I have that as a larger part of my plan when I'm working with clients. The last takeaway for me is, again, validation. Validation for me that what I'm doing is a thing. What I'm doing is a thing.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a
real thing.
It is a real thing. And to see that, I have always struggled with work, and the value in work has to come from, so I have a farmer father whose definition of being done was, I collapse and I'm dirty and I'm exhausted. That's how you know you've worked hard and you're done. And my mother, who was a stay-at-home mom, but also grew a garden, but also farmed, but also taught, went back to school in the evenings and had a huge career. And so her version of work, so I grew up with these two really large versions of work, which were often associated, you're done when you're exhausted, and you're done when you know you literally can't kind of do anymore. And so doing this work feels really good to me. And it's very validating, and it's very exciting to me, even though, like you said, that maybe that's a little bit of a sadistic thing. But I love this work. It excites me. I love hearing how people think. I love people, that concept. And so for me, I've always struggled with, is this really work? Am I working hard enough? Because I actually like it. I don't feel exhausted by it. And it isn't draining to me. And is that wrong? Am I not doing enough? I must not be doing enough, because I kind of don't feel exhausted or drained or laborious about my job. But when I hear
Isn't that funny? You know, how those childhood issues, your parents' version of done is, I'm done. And our version, and maybe that's why you put all that work into your emails and the follow-up and whatnot, because you don't feel done.
Right.
And so the takeaway I'll leave you with is, we have to allow our clients to do their work. Mm-hmm. And don't overstep that and do too much of that work for them, or they don't take it on. We want them to learn. We want them to be self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so this difference between counseling and coaching, see, you know, I didn't go into your whole history here. I'm not looking at your childhood and, you know, how you were fed and toileted and but we can use a little snippet and make a connection.
Oh, yeah.
And use that to enable the coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I really value your time. Really appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much for sharing your holiday time, tisk tisk, on this call. I really appreciate it, Gary.
Next month.
Okay, sounds great. See you.
Toodaloo.
Bye.